Oh, let me hit record. I'm gonna hit record so we can get this
Okay.
just in case there's, yeah. So we got started like 3 years ago, right? Before the pandemic, 2019, mid 2019. And we had done a podcast before that wasn't very popular, where we talked about one of her favorite TV shows. And then like eventually we scrubbed that from the internet. It was kind of an embarrassing endeavor. And we're like, we need to do another podcast. So we were thinking about ideas for a while. And then we picked Relient K because it was a band that we discussed the first time we became friends, like the first time we kind of met each other. Yeah. It wasn't the first time we met each other, but it was the first time we were hanging out after we met each other in college. And Relient K was one of our first talking points. And then eventually we got married. So we're like, okay, Relient K is clearly an important connective tissue, part of our story. So yeah, that became the idea for the podcast. And then shortly before we started doing this podcast, I was tied into the community for a Blink 182 song by song podcast.
Okay.
And other people from that community started doing other podcasts that were song by song of their favorite bands. And then I was like, oh, song by song, Relient K. This is clearly the idea that we should be doing. Because then it gives us hundreds of episodes, as opposed to like doing a podcast on a band like Relient K that's kind of well known but doesn't have like a ton of information out there, and then we're struggling for topics every week. Like doing a song every week kind of confirms that we'll always have a topic to talk about.
Well, it's kind of cool too that you like choose a band that, like you say, like isn't, the most popular band in the world, because it makes like the fans of that band be like, oh my gosh, like we gotta like check this out.
And then we can always get information from those fans, because we have a lot, like I have a history during the band's first 4 years of going to a lot of their early shows and talking to them and learning a lot of like, information from that time, but then kind of losing touch with them as they got more popular and famous as they did around 2005. Sure. So like I have these stories that I can share that I don't think anyone else has. And then we can get those same stories from people who find our podcast and start listening and have like, stories about talking to Relient K or learning specific things. Like they're just that kind of band where all the fans have very individual stories. It's not like some bigger bands where everyone's story is pretty similar. Like I was walking through the mall and I saw the CD at FYE or something. I bought it. Like that's not everybody's Relient K story.
Right.
Yeah. Unless that's your Relient K story, in which I did not mean to spoil
it. No, not really. I mean, they're one of my favorite bands. Always have been. Just inspired me from a really young age. I grew up in a Christian house. I couldn't really listen to any other music but like Relient K and Switchfoot and like Lecrae and stuff.
Okay.
But they were just right up my alley, and they still kind of influenced the music that I do to this day. I mean, I've always loved music, but I was an actor primarily for, a really long time. And then my show ended in 2018 and I sort of started to write music. And, Relient K is just in the fabric, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like when you listen to a certain type of sound, a band or an artist for so much growing up in those very crucial years of development, it just is in what you're doing, And they were one of my first concerts. It was in New York City. I want to say it was when that big banner came down. I'm pretty sure there was an apple on it. I think I was like 10 or something like that, which would make it 2006.
Is that the banner with the city skyline and there's like an airplane in it?
I'm pretty sure. And that was like the first time that I like waited in a line like around a block, you know what I mean? And I was introduced to that sort of culture of like, oh my gosh, like we're all standing outside in the cold in New York City for this one thing. And that's what I love about music. It just like creates a community, it's more than just listening to music. It's like being a part of something bigger than yourself. And I think that's what the best artists do. I just have the best memories of Relient K. And my older brothers lived in New York at the time, and my parents flew me out there. to go see them, but also to go see this Relient K show. And I want to say it was at a pretty big venue. I can't remember what it is. It wasn't the Gramercy, it was bigger than that. But yeah, it was the best show, and it just blew my mind. And I remember Thiessen like going on the keys, and like they're just so nostalgic and emotional and hard, and like, you know, it's they're their own thing, man. Nobody can touch Relient K, you know, to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. So we hit the ground running. So just to set up for everyone listening, we're talking to Jack Griffo. I'm pronouncing that right? Griffo?
That's right.
That's right. Okay. So and you're an actor, a musician, and I assume so. We had a pretty big week recently for our podcast because the official Relient K Instagram account like posted shouted us out for the first time. Like they had slowly been interacting with us over the last couple months, like liking our tweets and like putting some of our stuff in their stories, but they actually posted a thing. And so we had a really big week, and like a bunch of people were DMing us and like catching on to us. And then you and I were talking in DMs. Did you hear about us from that Instagram post?
I think maybe, yeah.
Okay.
You know, I saw that there was a Relient K podcast, and I honestly haven't done many podcasts. I've done like a couple, but I've always had a really good time on them. It's like this whole medium of just like very conversational, and it's kind of vulnerable, and and I thought it'd be a great, you know, opportunity for something that I'm passionate about to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that with a lot of people who have listened to our show and are Relient K fans. It's like I don't have a lot of people to talk about Relient K with. So they're like they're asking, they'll ask us things in DMs, and they'll leave us voicemails because we have a voicemail line for our podcast. So like people get to express this thing that they love this band, but not everybody's heard of them, but they're pretty big. Like it's in like any kind of cult band. It's like obviously they have fans all over the world, but you're not going to find like a fan sitting next to you on the subway or the bus or something. So it's always great to have a meeting point.
I feel like it's one end of the spectrum. I feel like it's like if you say Relient K, people are either like, what? People are like, yes, you know.
I feel like
you know.
Yeah. I feel like the band though is probably more well known now than the car they were named after.
Yeah. Right? It's so funny. And they're from Ohio, right?
Something like that. Yeah. They're from Ohio, but they have all kind of migrated to Nashville.
Right.
And now Matt Hoops lives in Florida. So they all started in Ohio, and then they all kind of started moving to like the Southeast area. Yeah.
I feel like they sort of invented that like Midwest emo, right? You know what I'm saying? They were like the biggest band to come out of that like genre before that genre was even a thing, right? I've been seeing more about that genre like now in the past few years than ever.
Right.
But man, they really just did pioneer like a sound, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And especially because like, you know, when people would hear Relient K, you know, it's so unique, it's so its own thing, but also there's like these little like God references, right? And like people are like, wait a second, like is this a Christian band, you know?
Right.
And even people that like, and that's what's so cool about, you know, people in the spotlight that can sort of moonlight a little bit, if you know what I'm saying, kind of like disguise themselves as something else when really the message is what it is. And I think it's such an amazing way to share your perspective as an artist, you know, because if people are like, you know, just shoving their message in the audience's face, like nobody really wants that, you know.
Right.
But to like hook listeners with a sound that anyone can, because that's like the most universal form of communication. It's just music and sound, and people can hear it and be like, oh yeah, I like this. And then they get to the meat and potatoes of like what they believe in and what their message is, and it's just powerful. It's just awesome stuff.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We've talked about that over the years on the podcast, because some of my background is like I was raised in a Christian home as well, but I was born in the 80s, so there was no like I don't know, there was, and I was raised in Boston, so it's like it wasn't a thing where it was like a culture. It wasn't a thing where like Christian media was a culture, but like I see that now, like, you know, especially being on this podcast on social media and stuff. I'm like, people just after my generation, not even generation, but just people just after my decade were like raised in this culture of Christian media. And then like a band like Relient K, it takes to like actually kind of break out of that in a way where the music is kind of first and the message, it's not a second, it's very important, but the message, the music is the most important. And unlike, since I grew up in a Christian home, but my parents like didn't like music. They didn't like me listening to everything, but they didn't like stop me. And then I discovered Christian music kind of on my own. And I was like, oh, there's also Christian music. And, I listened to a lot of bands that were that thing you were talking about, where they are very much like putting it in your face. Like you need to get saved and here it is. And there's a place for that. But there is also a place for bands that want to be a band and then are Christian and have a faith, and they make that a part of their lyrics, but to like make it the music first, like bring people together, no matter where they're coming from with music. And then if they look deeper into, if a Relient K fan looks deeper into their lyrics, they're like, okay, there's something here. And I think that's what's so great about Relient K is, since I'm pretty familiar with a lot of bands, like, not to name anyone, but the Supertones are like super, super evangelical. Like we exist to get people saved. And there was a point early in Relient K's history where it was like, they said, our mission, like we're here to get people saved, but they kind of like matured. And especially with because is like their big maturing album musically and message wise. So it's like, okay, we're not just a youth group band anymore. We're going to do Warped Tour. We're going to do Jay Leno. We're going to do all these things. And like be a band, and then people can hear what we're saying, and it's a more powerful message that way,
as
opposed to accosting.
Wove it together.
Yeah. I think they're like one of the best bands to really do that, and especially because they get people from every side of every aisle. Like the fact that people can listen to them for 20 years and be like, wait, they're a Christian band.
Right.
And then
because it's so like you said, it's so kind of not in the background, but in a way, just like the music is front and foremost. You know what I mean, with Relient K. And it's obvious that that they want to make good music. That they say what they believe in. But at the end of the day, like it is such a specific sound, and I think that's as me as an artist myself, like just starting to put music out last year, it is hard to like have a harmonious aesthetic, and they've just done it so well. And like you said with that was really the album that it seemed like high schoolers becoming adults, you know what I mean, in a very very cool artistic way. And I love that in all their albums, like like we talk about the Christian thing, and like some songs are not even about it. Some songs are about girls, and some songs are about stuff that the band members are going through or whatever. But on to be honest, this Life After Death and Taxes was one that I didn't listen to on repeat. But I listened to it a few times today. And crazy how poignant those lyrics still are in this climate and culture of cancel culture and left versus right and the division of it all. Matt's like talking about Taxi, like take me to the heart of it, like the center of the politics. And it's just it's kind of that liberating thing of like, as Christians, I feel like we sometimes don't want to be dangerous, and we don't want to put our opinion out there because we're afraid of, the confrontation or the conflict or whatever. But Matt Thiessen is so specific in the way he talks about, well, I'm liberated, I can go in because I know that I got my back covered, and I think listening to that song today, probably for the first time in many, many, many years, it just really struck me and touched me in a way of like, like we're not supposed to be on the sidelines. We're supposed to get in there. We're supposed to be dangerous. We're supposed to share our opinions, even if, we don't have all the answers. Nobody does. If you're pretending like you do, like you're the lost one, you know what I mean? We're all kind of figuring it out. And as long as we're kind of sort of just true to ourselves and true to what we believe in, then, you really can't go wrong, and I love that about this song. But in this album, I think some of my favorites, I love Who I Am, Hate to Have Been, obviously. This album is my girl's ex-boyfriend, right?
Yes.
I love that song. Yeah. And that's just one of those songs that, like, isn't a Christian thing. It's just like I feel like Relient K has like the super emotional songs, the sort of like messagey songs, and like the cheeky songs,
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the chapstick and chap lips, the Sadie Hawkins dance, and that, speaking of Sadie, like we can go there for a second. Like, I went to summer camp for like 10 years as a kid, from age 7 to 17. And it was like a Christian camp. And that was the first time I heard Relient K was Sadie Hawkins dance.
Okay.
When they played that. And, everyone's dancing, loving the song with the older kids, and I just remember being like, this is super distant in my memory, being like, what is this? Like, this is it, and like I said in the beginning of this podcast, like, it's those super formative years, and I think that's why music means so much to people, because especially music you listen to as a kid, because it's just so nostalgic when you hear it now. And it kind of just, me as an artist, formed a lot of my perspective and what I like, and my taste, and my interests. So yeah, that was the first time I heard Relient K with Sadie Hawkins dance at summer camp. And honestly, ever since then, like it was history from there. I just dove into their discography and always followed them. And I made posts for them, and because I just wanted people to hear it. And let's get into this. Like, I feel like Relient K has like left us hanging a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they came out with the Boomerang album, The Part-Time Lover, and that was like, yes, they're back. Like, I was all about that album. But I'm not here to say, like, people are living their life, I don't know what they're going through. And who are we? That's the whole thing of fan like Rihanna, fans of Rihanna are like, where's the music? Where's that?
Right.
So I feel like that about Relient K. I'm like, come on, people.
Yeah.
But I love them so much, and I'm waiting tooth and nail to hear more Relient K. I think we all are,
I'm sure something's coming this year, because they already have 2 festival dates planned for later in this year. They have Furnace Fest and When We Were Young. And so when we started the podcast, we didn't know what was going on, and a lot of people, especially in 2019, that was the dark age of Where's Relient K. Because like they basically, after the Air for Free album, which was 2016, and they toured that until 2017, when they finished that, they kind of like stopped. But then
like radio silence.
Yeah, radio silence. I don't want to say stop, because that implies they broke up. They didn't break up. But what we figured out as we started tracing their history, and it's not easy to trace their history because their Wikipedia is not complete. There's no books about them or anything. But you got to scour for interviews. But basically, they went nonstop from 2000 to like 2016. Like they kind of went nonstop. But they had, for the first decade, they had an album every year. And then, for the 2010s, they had an album every 3 years. And then after that Air for Free album, they were like, we're adults now, let's slow down.
Right. Yeah.
And then COVID hit, because I think they were going to pick back up. We see circumstantial evidence that they were basically going to pick back up in 2020. And then that just slowed down. And because they went so long without, like, they don't live online. Like Matt Hoops does the social media, but Matt Thiessen is like, he's like earthy and stuff. He doesn't use social media that much. So So like they don't have a big presence online all the time. So people were like, oh, they must have just broken up and not told us. I'm like, I feel like they would have told us. I think they just kind of, circumstances were what they were, and they'll be back. And I'm pretty sure something's going to come along this. We don't have any inside information. I'm just saying, I feel like something's going to happen this year.
Yeah, I took a look at their page before when we confirmed to do this, and I do pick that up as well. My detective skills tell me that there's something brewing in the Relient K world, and it's very exciting. They're still, one of my all-time favorite bands, like top 10 for sure, like no doubt.
Yeah.
You know, I just can't wait, you know. Man, like they're just the best, you know.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to go to the East Coast for this last tour?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, we had to do it because we're like, well, we're the Relient K podcast. And it just so happened that 2 of the shows were near our parents' homes.
Oh, wow.
This is a question for you to tie to Jessica, but I'm from Boston and Jessica's from Orlando.
I'm from Orlando.
That's what we thought. That's what we saw.
Dang, that's so cool.
What part of Orlando are you from?
I'm from Dr. Phillips.
Okay. I did Taekwondo there.
Wow. Yeah, I went to the first academy.
Okay. Yep. I had a friend who went there. Yeah.
Awesome.
I lived in Celebration, the next to Disney Town. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Where'd you go to school?
They had at that time a private school there called Celebration Academy, and before that there was a non-denominational school called Buena Vista Academy that closed down right after I left middle school.
So. Okay, you know, I definitely know of them. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Orlando repping. Let's go. Love the Orlando thing. Great place to grow up. Like a lot of art, a lot of performance art around there.
Yeah.
A lot of community theater, and that's kind of how I got into it. My older brothers went to Dr. Phillips High School, and they're one of the biggest theater magnet programs in Central Florida.
Yeah.
And so I just grew up just idolizing that, and moved to LA when I was 13 with my mom, pretty much.
Okay.
Nice.
To kind of pursue this. So
yeah, we met in Orlando. We went to film school, went to Full Sail.
Yeah.
So we went to Full Sail, and that's where we met. And then we moved to New York for a while, and then we moved here in 2014.
Yeah. To LA.
Yeah, to LA.
Yeah.
You're in LA.
Yeah, we're in LA.
Oh,
I guess I didn't mention that when we were talking at the end.
We should have done this in person.
Oh yeah.
I thought you guys said you were in the Bay Area. I don't know why I thought that, but that's so cool. You guys are here. What area are you guys in?
We're in the Sherman Oaks area.
I'm in Van Nuys, bro.
Oh my God.
We're right around the corner. That's awesome.
That's so funny. And then I was talking about how we started this podcast because I was part of a community of a Blink-182 podcast. One of the other podcasts is a Jimmy Eat World song by song podcast, and he lives over here as well. We're all centralized in this area.
Yeah.
And we just did a crossover episode with them, and I'm like, you're down the street. We could also be doing this in person. But yeah, go ahead.
So Relient K is doing When We Were Young, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have a funny story. I was there last year.
Okay.
It got canceled. Remember when it got canceled?
Yeah.
Yes.
For the wind warning. Oh my gosh, man. It was the worst thing ever, but ended up being kind of cool. So we wake up at 9 a.m. ready to go to the festival. We're only there for Sunday or Saturday, which is when it got canceled. It ended up happening on Sunday, but we were only there for Saturday. We had our Airbnb. It was 9 of us. And we wake up to a text from one of my friends in the house, and she was like, guys. And right then, I just knew something was wrong in the air. I knew it wasn't happening. And sure enough, I look on Twitter. It's like, When We Were Young, canceled. I'm like, no. Oh my gosh. We're moping around the Airbnb. Like, what do we do? You know, this is so lame. And we do go outside, and it is really windy. So we were like, all right, well, at least it's legit, you know.
Right.
And we, sure enough, we start seeing on Twitter that some of the bands are trying to do some really short notice shows on the Strip. You know, we see All American Rejects is doing a thing at some barbecue joint, super small venue, and everyone on Twitter is like, don't even come, it's packed, you can't even get in. So that's off the table. And then at this point I'm like, okay, this is the festival. We're gonna find the show. And I tell everyone in the house, I'm like, get ready, girls. Get in your hair and makeup. 30 minutes, we're out the door. I just knew we had to be there on the Strip. And we see Red Jumpsuit Apparatus is gonna be at the Stratosphere. So we go there. It's so packed, and the Stratosphere is the hotel on the Strip that's super old. They were not prepared for this just mass of people being there. We get there, there's military militia on the ground, AKs, AR-15s, they're walking around. There's thousands of people, and they're not letting anybody in the hotel that doesn't have a room key. So we're just hanging out there. We kind of just with our, twiddling our thumbs. We're like, what do we do? We find out that there's like another show, I forget the band, and then there's like some mystery show at the Palms, and we're like deep on Reddit, we're on Twitter, we're like trying to find a show if it freaking kills us. And we find out through like a friend of a friend, like somebody we knew on Travis Barker's kid, I forget his first name, but Travis Barker's son is gonna open for Knocked Loose, who's opening for Bring Me the Horizon at the Palms.
Oh wow!
So we found out early. We got there to the Palms, like one of the first like 25 people, and we like secure our spot. And sure enough, like right then, like thousands of people are like surrounding the Palms, just around the block, you know. And it was like one of the coolest experiences because we got to kind of experience the band Knocked Loose and Bring Me the Horizon. We're like in this ballroom right outside of the theater, and we're like listening to them sound check. You know, they're putting this show together like so quickly. And it was just one of the coolest shows ever, like the best visuals I'd probably ever seen. And for a band to like have the means to pull that show together in the matter of 3 hours, you know, we're watching the staff kind of figure it out as they go. It was the coolest experience. And I really wasn't a Bring Me fan before this. You know, I'd listened to their music, obviously, but man, their live show was really, really cool. So that's that amazing. Was my when we were young story. Yeah, I ended up being great, but in the beginning of the day, it was a bump when we were bummed, right?
Right. That's amazing because I remember all the memes and everyone talking about like, oh, we knew it. It's Emo Fire Fest. It got canceled, and I'm like. It's not on an island. The bands are actually there, but then you didn't hear about the day that worked out the next day. Like nobody talked about. I mean, obviously there were articles about it, but there were no memes about it worked out perfect the next day. But I didn't hear any of like bands up and down the Strip. That's amazing.
Yeah,
it was really cool. It was like this mini festival, like figuring itself out as the day went. I was like, this is it. This is the experience, guys. Like, let's go to the Strip. Let's figure it out, you know?
It sounds like basically emo South by Southwest, but on the Strip. Like you walk down the street and walk into a hotel and there's a band playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a cool experience, especially, you know, we kind of figured that, you know, we were just shot for the weekend, you know, we were gonna just do whatever, like hang at the Airbnb, you know. But you know, that's what's so cool about this culture of bands is like they really do it for the music, they really do it for the fans, you know. They probably, didn't get much profit off of these little shows that they put on, but like, you know, they know that people came from around the world to see them, and you know, they felt like they had a responsibility ethically, like to the fans, to do something. And that's what I love about this type of music. You know, there's a lot of artists out there that wouldn't do that, you know what I mean? And it was really sweet and cool that they put on these shows in the matter of like a few hours for the fans, you know. And we got there super early and we were really close to the stage, like, and the visuals were just insane. And so it's very cool. I'm really psyched that Relient K is doing it next year. I think it's going to be a great fit for them, and you know, especially if they put out some music.
I'm definitely hoping for some new songs by then. So there was something in there, but I can't remember. Like we're pregnant, so it's like we don't know if we're gonna be able to go.
Congrats!
It's our first kid, so it's like, well,
both of you at the same time.
But we definitely would want to go, but we're like, the tickets are so expensive, and we'll have the kid. We don't know how it's gonna be working by then. So like, let's see if someone brings us a ticket or something.
Like those headphones only fit so big.
Yeah, you guys aren't going to be those parents with their little like baby at the festival.
We would.
Headphones on the baby. That's so obnoxious.
Maybe when they're older, like definitely want to take our kid to music when they're young. When they're young, but like not like when they're a tiny baby.
I'm like, those massive headphones will not fit on a head like this big.
When I see kids like younger than like 5 out there, I'm looking at the parents. I'm like, like, who is this for? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
What's really going on here? You know what I mean? But it's cool, you know.
So so I'm gonna pretend there was no break there. So you have music as well. You have Kid Baron is your band, and I was checking them out this week while we were getting ready to talk to you, and I really like this music. I can actually kind of hear the Relient K influence. There's a lot of different influences I hear. There's like a lot of 90s vibe, but I also kind of, and then there's like 90s vibe in certain Relient K things, like Forget Not Slow Down is very 90s, even though the earlier records are different. But I really love the 3 Kid Baron songs that are on Spotify. So what's the origin of that band, and like what kind of influence did Relient K have possibly on that? Like any other songwriting influences for that group?
Sure. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You know, the band started in 2019. I've always loved music. You know, I never really thought that I would be an artist and release, you know, original stuff. I just loved playing. You know, I grew up doing like community theater and musical theater. But I was on Nickelodeon for, you know, age 16 to 20. And then I kind of just had all this time, and my life totally changed. And, you know, I realized that I have, you know, this gift, and I wanted to pursue it. You know, I started writing songs, and nothing really that like just set me on fire though. I was just kind of teaching myself how to do it. And from 2018 into 2019, I was just, you know, trying to kind of stretch those muscles and, you know, kind of do it for fun, you know. And then I started going through some stuff. My parents ended up splitting up, and that was really hard for me, as it is for everybody that happens to. And I really leaned on it as my therapy. You know, I started to write these songs that really meant something to me, and my whole perspective and view of art and music and what it could mean to people and myself totally radically changed. And I've been playing music with my friend Tristan for a while. He's this like, you know, badass guitar player. Like, I always loved his skills and his taste and stuff. And when I started going through this stuff with my parents, I sort of texted him, and I was like, I feel like I need to make a song. And he was like, come on, like, let's like come up to my house in Granada Hills. You guys know.
Yep.
And and we made this song called Birds about my parents. And like ever since then, it's just been on. Like, we saw the vision from the start. And all of 2020, this was at the end of 2019. So all of 2020, that whole wash of a year that it was really awesome for me, because I was really exploring this new avenue. You know, we started playing with in a 6-piece. We had a saxophone and congos player from
nice.
Puerto Rico, and you know, we had a keys player. And so for me, it was really not trying to be a rock star or be a musician. It was just this new thing for me, and I was learning how to play and do this sort of song and dance and fit in with a band, you know, because before that I had just done the music with me and my guitar, you know. And so different being in a band. And so that year, all of 2020 was just really exploring that as a new hobby, you know, kind of finding a new passion for music, starting to write songs that, well, because this is kind of an interesting point, like when you collaborate like with people, other musicians, it opens up so many more avenues of what you're doing. You know, I used to just write like on my guitar and, you know, figure out the chords and the melody, but all of a sudden I had these musicians like worrying about the music, and I could just sort of like teleport to where I was in my mind. And one of my strengths is the words, you know, the lyrics. And I'm still getting better with melody, but right away I realized that when someone else is doing guitar or instruments, I could flow. And that was something that was like, oh wow, like this is totally different now. You know, I have this band, and I can just sort of like share what I'm thinking and put it into a song. And so all of 2020 was kind of that, just exploring. And then we sort of solidified in 2021 as the first group. We were called The Pulp.
Okay.
And that ended up not being the band, even the band name, because we shortly found out that there was an English band called Pulp, so we couldn't really do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that year 2021, we sort of started playing these backyard sort of shows. A little bit frowned upon because still COVID, but we were like, screw it. Yeah, part of the problem, whatever. And that was just kind of like backyard shows, just kind of dipping my feet into this whole live performance thing. And we didn't hit a studio for like 2 years. I really wanted to just be in a band and have a sort of live sound down, and be able to put on a show. And that was my main priority. I started doing these little shows and I was like, wow, this is totally different from acting. Like acting is like, you're kind of sort of hiding behind this character, and, music is very much like, this is who I am, like take it or leave it, and it leaves less room for for artists to care about the criticism, because at the end of the day, you're just like who you are. And if someone's going to like come after you for that, it's like, all right, well, sorry.
Right. Yeah.
And when you're playing a character, it's much more like, oh, the critics, and no, you're not believable and this and that. And like, you don't really have to convince anyone when you're doing music if you're doing it in an authentic way.
Right.
So yeah, and then 2022, last year came around, and that's really when we had been through a couple different versions of the band. We were the Pulp. We were a band called the Pretty Grit for a second. And Tristan, my guitar player, I have to give him credit, like has stayed with me since the beginning, like founding member. And that has been so important to me, to have someone who has my back. And, we have just such similar taste. And, I feel like it just serves the group and the band so much more when there are at least like 2 people that have been in it since the start, and he really balances me out in a great way. I can be kind of emotional and dramatic, and he's very rational, whereas he's very like a spreadsheets kind of guy, and he thinks very rationally, like I said. So yeah, and then 2022 we solidified as Kid Baron, and we started playing little club shows. And I remember the first one we did was Molly Malone's in West Hollywood, the Irish pub, sort of that like bowling alley type venue. Yeah. And we packed it out. It was pretty easy to pack out because it was kind of narrow. And I remember just getting off stage, I was like, oh, like this is what I was put here to do, Right. And I never felt like that with acting, like I still am passionate about acting. Like it's my first love for sure. And I still have my auditions and I still work here and there. But music is like the new thing for me that I'm just so passionate about. And I really see a vision for this group and this band. And I sort of started developing that message and that vision. And basically it's like Kid Baron is spelled Baron, like a leader. And it's sort of a double meaning. I didn't know if I was going to name it that or I was going to name it Baron, as in Barren. Because for me, like the whole inception of the group was like this really terrible, tumultuous time in my life when my parents broke up. And I wrote this song about it. And I realized like the sort of transformative power of music, turning something that was so terrible in my life to something almost joyful in this song Birds. And that kind of became the antithesis of why I do this, and so many times in any profession, but especially art, you have to ask yourself why. Like it's always about the why. Like you might get some credibility or you might get streams, but it's like, will that necessarily translate to like making a living? Like who knows? Like it's so hard to make a living with music, so I have to ask myself why. And it's like, well, I feel like I have to, like I feel like it's the only thing that feels true and right in my life, and I'm still learning so much about it, and there's so much room for growth. But yeah, we put out music last year for the first time. And our Work It Somehow was our first song, and kind of like Birds, it was a song that was from a really rough time in my life. I lost a friend, not to death or anything, but just lost a friend, and it was really hard for me, a really really close friend. And I just kind of somehow knew in my heart that, you know, even though we weren't talking, that it would just work out. And so I kind of made a song about that, and Work It Somehow was our first single, and it's still one of my favorite songs to play. I'm doing a little acoustic set on Monday at the Ziggy Hotel if you guys are around.
Okay.
I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna play it on Monday, and I just love that song. And so we put that song out in April, and then we put Best Shot out in September. And all the while last year, we were doing a lot of shows. That was like my main focus last year, was to really do as many shows as we can. We sold out the Viper Room, which was such an amazing night, and probably our best show. And this year, my focus has been more on writing and recording, and I really want to start cataloging this year. But I'm putting out a lot of music. You know, we only put 2 singles out last year, and we already have one under our belt this year. There's another one coming next month with Magic Giant. They're an amazing band. We have a collaboration with them in the works. I'm actually playing and singing that song on stage with them in Venice tonight.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
I'm really excited about it. They're having their tour kickoff show at Venice West tonight. If you guys are around, come. Yeah, I'm singing our new song "Be My Baby" with them, and tomorrow we shoot the music video with them before they leave for tour. And that's been amazing to have a group like that kind of be involved in our process. Basically, their guitar player Zhang got connected to us through one of our old band members, and right away, like, he just saw my vision and really supported us from the start as this sort of co-writer, producer, band coach kind of role. And it was just like, I love him so much, and I'm so grateful for someone that, you know, that they were doing and are doing like what we want to be doing. Like, they're a top tier touring band. And that's really what we want to do. We want to travel and play shows and share the message with as many people as we can.
Right.
And so we didn't know if we would do a collaboration with them. It was kind of always like talked about. Basically, Zhang co-wrote and produced Work It Somehow and Best Shot, our first 2 songs. So he's really been instrumental in our whole process and journey. We're going to release an EP this summer that has a lot of songs that we, or like 4 or 5 songs that we worked with him on. So we're still kind of in that, you know, phase. And yeah, so we brought a song to them called "Be My Baby." We hadn't quite hit or landed on a chorus yet. And they really liked it, and they sent us a mix of the song with Austin, their lead singer, singing like a new hook. And we were just like, it was big for us. It was monumental, because we were just like, wow, you know, it was pretty surreal to hear like my words and my lyrics, and then, you know, this awesome band seeing it and wanting to be a part of it, and actually elevating the art so much. So we're very excited about our Magic Giant release coming out. We have, like I said, the show tonight. I'm going to hop on stage, and the music video tomorrow. And
Nice.
We're going to do a double EP this summer, which is going to be really cool. Like I mentioned, kind of like we have one that we did with Magic Giant, with Zhang, rather. He was kind of the producer of these 3 or 4 songs. And then we're going to do an EP pretty much directly after that. That's a little bit more in the alternative rock scene or a scale, if you will. And that's really what I see for the band, being alternative rock. And so I feel like I want to transition the sound a little bit there with that double EP, and then I feel like the stage will be set for our debut album this fall.
Right. That's great.
That's
yeah,
great, yeah.
I really enjoyed the music, and I can kind of tell how it would it could appeal to people who like later Relient K, like you know, from the Forget Not Slow Down, Collapsible Lung, Air for Free era, where they kind of expanded their sound. Like, you definitely have that like rock sound, but with some like contemporaneous elements like Relient K has been doing recently. So I can really see how like a Relient K fan would enjoy your music. I could see how it was written by a Relient K fan. Also, just as you were describing the Work It Out song, which I listened to, but I didn't kind of glom onto what it was about. That's a topic that comes up in Relient K songs all the time, because since we go song by song, there are so many Relient K songs that are about him trying to work out things with friends and work out his relationships. And it's a famous line from another song. I don't mean just with girls, I mean with everyone.
Yeah.
From Chapstick Chap Lips. Like, he's always talking about like he met, like, who I am, it's who I've been. is about you messed up with a friend and you want to work it out. And we actually call them bad friend Thiessen songs, because it's like a theme that constantly comes up on every album. Like he's always trying to like work on himself and his interpersonal relationships. So like there's already that kind of connective tissue there. If a Relient K fan checks out Kid Baron. Yeah. Well, definitely. I don't know if we can make it tonight, but like I'm definitely, I know, but I definitely want to check out some of your shows in the future. Now that we all know we're in the same city.
Yes.
Yeah.
We didn't even.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, they're very influential in my sort of process. You know, how I write is very much just about everyday things that happen to me, and I feel like that's the most pure way to do it. Sort of,
right.
You know, art is like taking what's on the inside and creating a visual or tangible expression in the real world, something that you can see and feel. And the best way to do it is just like actually taking, you know, experiences from your life. And it's interesting. I didn't even realize that you know, our first song was about, you know, a friendship. And I feel like relationships are, you know, the most important thing to me, you know, people and getting to know people and loving people and you know, sort of helping, you know what I mean? And I think that when you're on your deathbed, you're not really looking back at like, I wish I worked more, I wish I made more money, or I wish I got the newest iPhone. It's like, I wish I spent more time with people, you know, like people that I love. So I feel like, yeah, it's interesting. I didn't really realize that connection, that they do have a lot of songs about friendships and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. So we didn't even touch on, we didn't ask anything about your acting, because, so when we started talking on DM, I was like, I looked at IMDb and I'm like, oh, I think I've heard of the Thundermans, but it's clearly like past our time.
Yeah.
And so then I started checking out some of your things. I recognized that you were in the Super Sons. You did. You were Damian Wayne. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Because I've been a DC comic fan forever, and I keep up on not every new comic, but I know all the new storylines, and I read a lot of stuff. So the fact that you're Damian Wayne, that's really awesome.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited about it. I hope I get to continue to play it, because honestly, it was like the most fun I've had on a movie. Like I haven't done many movies. I've done much more TV in my day, and so this role of Damien was like so cool. I mean, to be a part of that family and that universe, you know, and to have a Robin that's like so unique, you know, there's like, I didn't even know there was like so many Robins, you know what I mean? And, you know, he's actually Batman's son, you know, he didn't really grow up with his dad, you know, he is Ra's al Ghul's grandson. And he kind of grew up as a, you know, crazy little assassin and was super deadly and whatever. And in the movie, you should check it out. It's like the best movie ever. Like it's
really good.
Thank you.
Yeah. I watch all those DC animated movies. I've been watching them since the first one, which was like in 2009 or something. The Death of Superman. I've been watching each one. And some of them are really good, some of them dip in quality, but this is one of the really good ones, especially since it was like that cell shaded CGI style. I was a little reticent of that at first, but it looks really good. Like it's one of the best ones. And she's a big Superman and Supergirl fan, so there was something there. And I'm a big Batman fan, so it's like a perfect thing. Awesome. And this is a really random, almost pointless reference, but it's true. When we were going to interview John Schneck from Green K, oh my god, from Relient K. We were going to interview John Schneck from Relient K. I was researching all of his, like I was listening to interviews he had already done so we could avoid questions he's answered. And he had this is like back in 2012 or something, or whenever the comic came out, he was reading the Super Sons comic at the time, and he talked about that comic back then, like in interviews. And I'm like, this is so random that the comic book a member of Relient K talked about in multiple interviews like 10 years ago. You're a voice in the CGI movie. There's no point in mentioning that. It's just one of those weird things that I gotta express.
That's so crazy, man. I mean, it's all connected.
Yeah. I don't know if that doesn't kind of serendipity, but it's like, it's like weird connections.
Yeah, Schneck's a big DC fan.
Yeah, he's a big DC Comics fan. It's awesome. It's so funny.
Maybe that'll be my end.
Yeah.
I mean, you could definitely like let him know, like, hey, I'm Damian Wayne in the Super Sons movie, and I almost guarantee he'll know what you're talking. He will know what you're talking about.
I'll send him a voice and be like, "What's up, man? It's Damian here," you know.
Yeah, so you were on Nickelodeon, and that was past our time, so I was not familiar with like the Thundermans or any of that stuff. But then I was like, double checking some stuff on YouTube, and you just presented at the Kids' Choice Awards like this week or last week or something. It just happened. And I gotta ask, because I watched the Kids' Choice Awards up until I was like 19 or something, like a little later than I should have. But I gotta know, is it actually as loud there as it seems like in the show, or do they pipe it louder in the like studio, like the kids yelling in the crowd?
I can't tell you for sure. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they were to fabricate a little bit of it.
Okay,
it's thousands of kids in there. I remember I was, it'd been years since me and Kira, my co-star, were really in the spotlight like that, and it was a lot of pressure. And I remember being backstage and seeing some like really famous people and being like, oh my gosh, and we're basically have our microphones and we're standing behind the little entry where we walk out and to present the award, and it's loud like you're saying, and I just go to her, I whisper to her, and we know each other so well, because we did 100 episodes plus of the Thundermans, and I was just like, I'm feeling it too. Like we're gonna be good. We're gonna be good. Because it's at the end of the day, like it's just the Kids' Choice Awards, but like it's the Kids' Choice Awards.
Right.
Like it's a lot of anything with like that amount of people looking at you is a lot of pressure. And I actually, we had a little bit on stage, and I memorized it, right? And they always tell you to just read the teleprompter, but I was like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna be good. Like I'm gonna perform it. I'm gonna hit all my beats, and Kira's reading it on the teleprompter like a good actress, like she should, and I'm kind of like playing to the audience. I'm like playing to Kira, and there's a moment that basically the line was like, I kind of joked that I'm going to accept this award. Like, I'll accept this award, Kira. And I'm basically like, and she's like, no, like we're presenting the award, Jack. And I'm like, oh, okay. And basically I kind of joke around and I'm like, well, I kind of thought we were giving the award for like hunkiest male or something like that. And right in that line, I kind of had like a little, like a stutter. I was like, hunkiest male, and I like was beating myself up over it. After we went off stage, I was like, I messed up, and my mom in the audience, I took my mom and she took a video and I watched it back. I was like, okay, like it actually didn't play that bad. Like it's crazy that things like that happen on stage. I was able to kind of play it off with my experience and whatever. I did have a moment where I was like, what am I saying? But I was kind of able to sort of play it off. And it's funny when you're on stage like that, everything just seems like such a bigger deal than it actually is.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting you bring it up, man. It was a really fun day, and I hadn't been on that carpet in 4 years, since 2019. And I'm like literally like such a different person than I was that year.
Right.
Like that's the year that I really like, it was March, and when I started the band was like end of that year in 2019. And so I've just been through like so much since then. Right. And I was really, really proud of kind of the way that I handled myself and I styled myself. And, there's a video of me kind of on the carpet, and it's a lot of pressure, Jack, and cameras flashing, and, and I looked good. I looked calm and confident. And I really feel like I have like weathered the storm of these past few years in a really, somewhat graceful way for the most part. We all kind of have our times where, we don't know what's going on, but, I keep my family close. Me and my mom are really close. I call my siblings a lot, and I try not to have yes people around me too much, and try to stay in touch with my hometown friends. And I feel like all of these things sort of kind of keep a sense of normalcy about my life, you know. It's really easy to kind of buy into people when they're like singing your praises and whatever. You know, you kind of have to remember that, you know, you put one, you know, leg on at a time, just like everybody poops, like, you know what I mean? You know, it's because it is, being in Hollywood is just so easy to be like, when people, like, I've had so many friends that, you know, get famous or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, like I was right all along, I'm the best. You know?
Right.
And it's just important to, you know, to kind of stay grounded, you know.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah. And I mean, it seems like a really genuine transition that you made from like this. I can't even imagine. I don't know, being a kid actor on television, and then this seems like a really genuine transition to like this band where you're personally really expressing yourself. And I know like there have been a lot of like kid actors who go on to other pursuits, and sometimes people make fun of it or whatever. But like this seems like a really genuine band. Like I really liked these songs, and I'm like, it doesn't seem like that thing to me of like, oh, this was a kid actor. Like, no, this is a really good band. I really enjoyed these songs, and I just want to impress that like if anyone wants to check these out, like they're definitely for Relient K fans. And you know, the fact that, you know, I mean, that's what brought us together is Relient K. That's the main thing that brought us together. And like, you know, I feel like if you're a Relient K fan, like you got to kind of stay grounded, because that's what a lot of their music is about. Their music is about like staying connected and not, and like that is so much of Matt Thiessen's writing, is like he definitely writes a lot about like, you know, trying to stay friends with people where you've messed up with, or trying to remember who you are, both in a like a spiritual sense, but also just kind of like in a everyday sense. So it's like, I could definitely see, I can definitely feel the influence of that in just this conversation that we're having. Like it's so great that a band like Relient K can influence people in different ways and all kind of intertwine into our stories, and it all kind of comes together. Am I making any sense right now?
Totally are. Totally, bro. I appreciate all of it. Yeah, it was amazing to talk to you guys today, and you know, let's keep in touch. You should come out to a show or something when you ever get a chance. Congratulations, you're both pregnant.
Oh yeah, I'm pregnant. Is that's not paternal twins, right? What is that called?
No,
yeah, we were trying for a real long time, so we're excited.
Oh, it's your first. Congrats.
Yeah. Awesome. It was a storyline on our podcast, because like, we not a storyline that makes it seem impersonal, but it was a thing we've been talking about on our podcast, is like we've been trying for a really long time, and it finally happened. So we had like all these friends around the world excited for us to listen to our podcast, and it was like really exciting.
That's so exciting. How far along are you?
5 months. So 21 weeks.
Amazing. That's so cool. I definitely want to have kids one day. I'm a big believer in power of family and 2 parents, and I think it's amazing. It's honestly like the pinnacle of what you can do here, you know what I mean? Like pass on the good things that you've learned, and you know, it's a huge accomplishment. So I mean, you know, still got a ways to go, but congratulations.
Thank you.
Wish you guys the best. Absolutely.
Thank you. So is there anything you want to direct people towards to check out of yours, like your Instagram, your Spotify, anything like that?
Sure. Yeah. So my Instagram is just my name, Jack Griffo, and I kind of do all of my posting and kind of updates on there. I do have a Twitter, same thing, Jack Griffo, and my band stuff is pretty much Kid Baron Music everywhere. And our Spotify obviously is Kid Baron. But yeah, we have a lot of music coming out this year. Like I mentioned before, we're really gonna start cataloging this year and put a lot of music out, 2 EPs and an album. So it's gonna be really cool. And our last single is doing like exponentially better than our first 2, which is like so encouraging, you know. And it's really cool to kind of see a little bit of momentum happening, and it encourages me to kind of really because now I'm honestly in this phase of like, I've been writing for like 6 months straight and getting songs together. And I feel like now I have, the double EP and the album. So it's kind of in the all right, we're going to finish these projects phase right now, which is really, really cool and exciting. And I've been collaborating with cool songwriters and stuff. And I still have some songwriters that I want to start collaborating with, but that now is going to be the next phase and the next album of next year, which is like, I can't believe that's even happening. Cause for 3 years now, it's been like, we're figuring this out. We're gonna, play a lot and we're gonna write a lot. And now we're like putting out music. It's really cool. So yeah, Kid Baron, Jack Griffo, I love all you guys, and it's great to meet you guys. You guys are awesome, and let's definitely catch a Relient K show together one of these days.
Hopefully they tour on the way. I mean, aside from the festival dates, one's in Alabama, one's over here in Vegas, but like hopefully they do
a West Coast tour, a proper West Coast tour.
When we talk
maybe Kid Baron will open. You never know.
Hopefully, yeah.
I just gotta send a little Damian Wayne. Kid Baron wants to be your opener.
Exactly.
Awesome, guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.